What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we are here to talk about Polyphia, a band that on paper really shouldn't be as successful as they actually are. For those who aren't familiar, they sound like this. As you can tell, it's very technical, instrumental, mathy, prog, rock, metal, whatever kind of stuff you want to call it. Not exactly the most commercially viable genre, right? Typically, that kind of stuff is really by guitarists for guitarists. And yet, Polyphia's videos consistently get millions and millions of views. Their top 5 Spotify songs have over 75 million streams. Their current headlining tour is sold out on every single date. And they seem like they're only continuing to get bigger with every release. So how did they do the seemingly impossible and get an audience of millions to fall in love with what's always been kind of a niche genre with a limited audience? And how big can Polyphia actually get? Those are the questions that I will answer in this video. But first, if you haven't, please check me out on Twitch. I'm streaming twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. But first, I'd like to thank Keeps for sponsoring this video. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men keep their hair. It might be too late for me, but it does not have to be too late for you. The reality is that most guys experience some kind of hair loss by 35. That's right about when it started to hit me. And Keeps offers clinically proven, research-backed treatments to stop hair loss and improve hair growth, delivered straight to your door. With Keeps, you don't have to go to a doctor, but you're still getting a doctor-recommended plan at about half the cost of a traditional pharmacy. Every plan comes with a full year of unlimited messaging where you can connect with your prescribing doctor about anything, anytime. They also have award-winning all-natural shampoo and conditioner, so whether you want to prevent hair loss, stimulate hair growth, or just take better care of your hair, Keeps is for you. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get a special offer on Keeps treatments, go to keeps.com/punkrock or click the link in the description of this video. That's keeps.com/punkrock. Polyphia as a band is over a decade old now, and in order to really understand the band, we have to start at the very beginning. Their origins go back to co-founder and I guess frontman Tim Henson's childhood, where he started playing the violin at the age of 3, and from the way he describes it, he was kind of forced to take music seriously even as a child.
I hated it. Like, she made me practice like 2 hours a day, and like I had like some fairly like abusive like teachers that would like smack my hand with the bow and shit when I fucked up.
His dad was also a guitarist who got Tim into Jimi Hendrix, then 80s shredders like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, and Tim's obsession with guitar began for real. He started his first band in 6th grade, and even then you can tell that he was not your average 11-year-old guitarist. Tim met their original drummer on MySpace, and Polyphia as a band was born, with the very first version of the band being, I guess you would say, like technical deathcore, kind of along the lines of The Faceless. And keep in mind, they were probably like 16 or 17 when they did this. The way it went through the wind you Pretty impressive, right? As you can tell, they actually had a vocalist for that EP, but that was quickly dropped and they decided to become a 100% instrumental band. But what really put them on the map was their 2013 EP, Inspire. In particular, the playthrough video for Impassion, which spread on forums and Facebook and went semi-viral in the guitar and progressive metal scene. This was also happening around the same time as the rise of the new wave of guitar influencers and bands like Ola England, Chon, Covet, and so forth. And this stuff definitely falls under the umbrella of quote-unquote progressive metal compared to their newer material, but even then you could see where they were headed. Where a lot of the stuff in that genre is just about showing off and trying to play the most technical stuff that you possibly can to impress other guitarists. Even back then, Polyphia was trying to make guitar music that would be accessible and cool even to people who weren't guitar nerds.
Technicality wise, like make cooler things to do on the guitar, but more so like how to use the guitar in music. Like what you were saying, like when people listen to the top 40, like they think, oh, well, like everything you can do on a guitar has been done, and I've heard that, and blah, blah, I don't care. It would be cool to make guitar cool again.
They continued to evolve their sound with their first full-length album, Muse, in 2014, which was notably less metal. But maybe the biggest thing is that this was when they also started to evolve their image. To put it bluntly, instrumental guitar music has never been quote-unquote cool. Meaning that when you think of your typical bedroom guitar shredder, you're not exactly thinking of the captain of the football team who's partying with hot girls, right? And Polyphia's earlier videos didn't really do much to challenge that stereotype, but with this album, they started to. For example, the video for Champagne is Tim and Scott in suits, drinking champagne with some hotties in the club, and watching it now, it's a little bit awkward, but still, it definitely makes them seem a lot cooler than the average guitar nerd who spends his average Saturday night alone by himself tweaking his Axe FX patches. They also went out on their first US tour in 2014, followed by going out with Coheed and Cambria the following year. And this was the perfect kind of audience for them, in the sense that it's a fan base that appreciates progressive music, but isn't just a bunch of guitarists. Another great example of this is Euphoria from their next album, Renaissance. And it may sound kind of dumb and simplistic to say, but the fact that the video features a hot girl in her underwear as the thumbnail was actually kind of groundbreaking for the genre. And even their outfits in the video were part of this overall mission to make instrumental guitar music cool and interesting to a non-guitar audience. As their co-founder Scott put it in an interview, we were wearing fucking Jedi clothes. Like, everything was super long and baggy, and that was honestly pretty lame, but I guess it kind of worked out for us in the sense that people were talking about us. Oh yeah, that group of assholes that wears like Jedi clothing. And I obviously can't read their minds, but it feels like this is the moment where they said, let's take what works for other genres like rap and pop in terms of marketing, apply it to what we do, and see what happens. You can also see that with Tim wearing a lot of flashy luxury brands in their videos and social media, but it's also important to note that that doesn't mean everything has to just be about sex and flashy clothes. It can just be about fun. For example, the song that got me into Polyphia was Lit. The video cuts between them playing in these kind of cool Jedi outfits and a guy dancing to the song with these like cool hand-drawn animations over the top. And it feels much more like something you would see a band like Turnstile do than something you would expect from a progressive metal band. And the same is true for the song itself, which is a remix of one of their older songs, Light. But in this version, it brings in more elements from electronic music. And according to Tim, the main guitar melody in the song is actually heavily inspired by the vocal melody from an Ariana Grande song. And so when you look at just the overall impression of the band, I thought this comment on the video really summed it up. Guitar sound, shred metal. Melodies, progressive. Beat, hip-hop. Sound effects, electronic. Looks, K-pop. But if I had to point to one moment where Polyphia really became quote-unquote Polyphia, it would be their song G.O.A.T from 2018. To me, this is where it feels like they finally really perfected the sound that they had been working towards for years, with this fusion of like math rock, progressive metal, and trap. And what I find really interesting about it is that it's actually not really metal at all, and yet somehow it still feels metal and metal fans love them. But at the same time, to someone who doesn't listen to metal and doesn't even really care about guitar, it's still accessible and cool, which means it's probably a good time for us to talk about exactly why they have that kind of crossover appeal, which I think more than anything comes down to Tim's approach to songwriting, that, as he will tell you, is far more influenced by rap and pop these days than anything metal. And to give you an idea of exactly what I'm talking about, he made a video breaking down how he came up with G.O.A.T, where he shows how it very directly came from a rap song called Breakfast by Jaden Smith.
So taking inspiration from rap music in general, I tried to make my guitar sound like a rapper.
Keep it spicy like old babe. Got me so high I can hold it. We on the green guacamole, and I've been fucked up like the whole day.
And what I think is really cool is that you can certainly see how he got from point A to point B, but listening to the songs next to each other, they don't sound the same, and it's certainly not like he just took a rap song and remixed it for guitar. He used it as inspiration, drawing from what worked and made that song so accessible, but came up with something completely different and unique to Polyphia. Another example is their song OD, where he shows how it's based on the structure of Look What You Made Me Do by Taylor Swift.
It's the same thing. Intro, first chorus, verse 1, pre-chorus, chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, post-chorus, bridge thing. And then here we have our final chorus.
They've also worked with a lot of rap and pop producers. For example, Y2K, who's worked with people like Ian Dior and Doja Cat, Judge, who's worked with Young Thug and Frank Ocean, and Morgoth Beats, who's worked with tons of people like Juice WRLD and Lil Xan. And also, got to give a shout out to their producer Nick Sampson, who has been with them from the very beginning. And Tim himself has actually been producing rap and pop for a few years now, working with some very impressive artists like Black Bear and Internet Money, among many others. And so what it comes down to is that although they get labeled as math rock or progressive metal, really at this point, I think it's more accurate to think of them as pop rock that just happens to be played by people who are incredibly good at their instruments. Because there definitely are lots of cool technical parts. For example, I really like a lot of the stuff that their drummer does. But that stuff never ever gets in the way of the song. The focus is always on catchy melodies, hooks, and dynamics. The flashy technical stuff is really just the icing on the cake. You don't have to even notice that stuff to enjoy the song, but if you do, well, it's a cool bonus for the people who do care about it. And personally, I find that incredibly refreshing, and I think it really speaks to their musical maturity. And what I mean by that is that in pretty much all forms of art, whether it's painting or writing or music, most artists go through an early period where they really fetishize technique and want to create the most baroque, complex work that they can. But as you mature as an artist, you realize that actually creating something that is focused and using restraint is even harder than just throwing every technique that you possibly can into it. And just like with pretty much everything else that they do, this approach to songwriting is not an accident.
If I would listen to it, you know, like versus just watch some dude play it like on Instagram, like if you like don't look at the phone and just like listen to it, it's just like, what the fuck am I hearing? That's literally what this is. This is an instrument that makes sound, the purpose of which is to make music. Anything that isn't doing that is just like, you know, it's like masturbatory.
But with that said, speaking of Instagram, I do think that their visuals and social media presence are also key factors in their success. Because I actually think that one of the main reasons why rock in general, but especially any sort of like progressive guitar-oriented music, fails to connect with an audience outside of that sort of core guitar scene is because of the visuals. Because whether you like it or not, the fact of the matter is that youth culture of the past 10 years has been largely defined by memes, anime, gaming, streetwear, and rap videos. So when you see a band put out a video that's just like more guys with beards wearing normal clothes jamming in some abandoned building, it just feels sort of out of step with the larger culture. And so because of that, it's going to be much harder for any of those artists to be relevant and connect with a younger audience outside of the guitar scene. Whereas if you look at a Polyphia video, like my personal favorite, Look But Don't Touch, it's like they put anime, gaming, rap videos, and metal into a blender, put it on the highest setting, and just like let it rip. And that particular video is especially insane, but all of their videos across the board are consistently great. Even when it's them just playing in a room, they still always go the extra mile to add some other sort of interesting twist. For example, in their latest video, Neurotica, there's a really tight color palette of neutrals with pops of gold, like how the color of the lights in the background of the video ties back to the gold hardware on their guitars. And the same is true of their merch. It doesn't look like quote-unquote metal band merch. It looks like product from a brand that you might see on the shelves at Zoomies or PacSun. And so you put all of that together, the music itself, the videos, the merch, the social media presence, and you get something that feels contemporary and relevant in a way that most rock artists now just don't. And I think that really is the key to how they've been able to build an audience outside of that guitar nerd niche where a lot of similar artists get trapped. Which again, I think really just comes down to their mindset. If you read interviews with a lot of bands now, they look at social media and videos almost like a chore, like something that they have to do, even though really they'd rather just be sitting at home playing their guitar. And so when it comes time to make a video, they grind out this uninspired video of them playing in some grungy warehouse, and then they act surprised when nobody cares about their music, failing to understand that they're competing for attention with video games and anime and TikTok and any of the other things that their audience could be doing right now. Why would they watch you just going through the motions of playing your song in some abandoned warehouse? Whereas with Polyphia, I get the sense that they look at videos and merch and all the other things that they do aside from music as just more outlets for their creativity. Like the whole band is kind of like one big art project with music at the center of it. Kind of reminds me of Odd Future in that way. One other super important thing is that I've also noticed that they have a lot more female fans than pretty much any other band in their genre. And you could say that that's just because Tim happens to be a very good looking guy that looks like the main character in some edgy anime, but I don't think it's that simple. I think it's a combination of all those things I talked about before. And so to directly answer the question that I asked at the beginning of the video, how did Polyphia find such a diverse audience beyond just guitar nerds? I think that the number one factor is actually very, very simple, which is they just tried. And that might sound simple, but a lot of artists who play progressive guitar-oriented music honestly don't try. And there's nothing at all wrong with that if they're happy with the audience that they have. But I do have to wonder what the ceiling is for a lot of supposedly niche music. If artists would just step outside their comfort zone, take more risks, and just try harder to think a little bit bigger like Polyphia's been doing since the beginning. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. And I would like to thank everybody who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get all my podcasts early. I do some giveaways and other fun stuff. And there's also a way to have me review your music. All you got to do is join at the $10 and up level. Every month I do a call for submissions. If you want me to review something, just drop it in the comments of that post. Then I will review it live on Twitch and post it on Patreon for everyone to see. So if that sounds cool, hit the link in the comments of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.